Hi guys, this is Si from SiNi Software. Today we're going to talk about using ProxSi with Cebas' final render. ProxSi is a universal ProxSi, so if you're, say, took some models from someone else and they were working in, say, mental ray or whatnot, the ProxSi does work completely with final render. So let's get started here, and we're going to let's select our ProxSi. We have two ways of adding this. We can add this as an internal or an external. The internal file format is written right into the max file, so there's no accompanying files. So let's go ahead and we'll grab an object here. So what it's going to do, as soon as you grab this, it's going to traverse through the scene and look for anything that would work as an instance. So it's found a whole bunch, and I'm going to say yes, I want to convert them all. And they're all an instance. So we can go display this in a couple of different modes. We have logo, pyramid, bounding box, our all favorite squirrel, point cloud, half mesh, and full mesh. Half mesh is with the reason we've put this in here is in our security lockdown, which actually I'll show you in another file here. If we were to show this in half mesh, it gives people the ability to sort of see what the textures are doing, but not to the point where you would actually export this out to be anything useful. So we'll just come back to this in a second. And also we have the full mesh. So for right now, let's just throw this in squirrel mode to keep this a little lighter. We have a texture and color variation which works with any final render material. So if we were to say, yep, let's go use our color shift and we'll turn our hue just a little bit. We have this run to the full spectrum of hue. Where that comes in useful is getting all different types of car paints. So if you had, say, a neutral color and you could shift this to quite a different amount of colors. For trees, we probably don't want to do that. So we'll just leave a little bit of there, a little saturation, maybe a little contrast. We'll see how that looks. So you can see we have a color variation on these trees. Now, depending on what, like I said, whether you're doing cars or trees or lampposts, there's going to be completely different settings on what you're going to use on your variations. It works as the same principle as using a color correct on your material, but it does a couple other things as well. So if you were to export this out, you have an option to export this back out as instances and keep the color correct on your materials themselves. We have a filtering, so if you wanted to say bark, and we add this, it's going to exclude any material called bark. So let's just take a look at let's take a look at the materials. So or bark, okay, so we have leaf material and we probably have, so we have a bark material. So your color correct would actually exclude that material in there, or you could actually switch this to just doing bark. So, and if you simply wanted to remove those, you have that as well. We have camera clipping. This also works as, when you're test rendering, sort of save you some extra calculations. It will do it without a camera, so it's using your active view. There is an expansion setting, so stuff that is off the screen will also be calculated, so it'll cast a shadow. So it's not losing any of your shadows. And then we have exclusion splines. So quickly, I have a spline here that's animated. It goes through the scene. If I was to add this spline, so let's enable splines, select this. And now if I was to render this, it's going to actually cull those trees out of there. So it's just a clipping method that we have. Sort of, you could grow a spline and have things disappear for your instance proxies only. All right, let's stop this for a sec. And so next we have proxy security. All right, let me just jump over to this other scene here. So we have this proxy in our scene, and what we want to do is lock this down. So if we go to set expiration date, and we'll set it to, well, this is today. We'll go through, and actually let's just set this to say next year. And we'll put in a password and put the password in again, and we'll lock down our proxy. Now, if you were to give this to somebody, there's nothing they can do with it. They can't export it out. They can't display it in full mesh. They can still work with it, change the textures around or whatnot, but they're not going to be able to export this at all. If you were to export this out, it's going to come out with 0 faces, 0 vertices. So the date, though, right now, if I was to take this and say render this, it's still going to render for them. And it's going to render with the full mesh, everything, no problem, be an exact item. But if I went in here and their proxy had expired, so let me just go back into security, and I'm going to put the password in again, and we'll unlock this object, go back to security, and let's set this date to, hey, last year or something. And we'll put in a password again, lock this down, and now it's still in your scene, but when it comes to render, it'll never render again. So this is our proxy security. So you can do this in an external and an internal file, and you won't have any problems with it. So it's more or less for sharing assets that don't belong to you. So where this came about was we were working on a project with a couple of different companies, and we had assets that were built for us but didn't belong to us that we needed to give out to another company. So we had to find a way to lock these down so it only worked for generally the project, and after that the objects themselves would expire. So let's just go back to our tree scene and we'll just look at the last part. So if we want to export this out now as a mesh, we can just simply say, sorry, let me just scroll down and I'll say export this out to mesh. And it's going to say, all right, well, do you want to export all your instances out or just this one? If I say no, it's going to export just this out as a unique item. If I say yes, it's going to export all my proxies, instance proxies out. So thanks for watching, and I appreciate it. Check out, we're going to have some other videos up soon on our productivity tools. So we have a couple of things that work that are built in specifically for final render. We have a HDRI viewer, which you're going to go pick an HDRI that'll suit your lighting in your scene. So it saves artists a lot of time. They'll be able to see what HDR looks like, import it in, and it works with final render. The other thing we have that we're going to be releasing soon is our asset manager. So if we were to actually grab an item in our scene, say we're working away and we wanted to not go create a whole new scene, not studio, we just select an object, bring this in. It's going to bring this into a studio scene all set up. We're going to go add in, say, what sort of, where it falls into. So we could say, nature, trees, go say, we'll call this tree 1. Add some keywords like forest, comma, tree. It's going to go check the asset. It's going to make sure that there's no problems with it. And then you can export this right out to your 3D file. And then as soon as you exit this, it deletes the studio scene, resets the lightings, resets the render engines, or render settings, and then you're back working your scene like nothing has changed. So we have a lot more tools, like I said, coming out for stuff that's compatible with Cebas products. In the future, we're going to be doing our next tab, which is our Ninja, which will be a lot more effects-based tools. So check us out, and thanks a lot. See you guys.